My name is Lila Anderson, and I'm 38 years old. Last week, my mother told me I couldn't bring my 3 children to the family Christmas celebration because they were too disruptive for her elegant holiday gathering. What she didn't know was that I had just been offered the opportunity of a lifetime to host a live Christmas special on our city's morning show. By the time Christmas morning arrived, my mother would be watching her rejection of her own grandchildren play out on television screens across the entire region. If you're watching this from a family situation where you felt excluded or undervalued, drop a comment below and subscribe. Trust me, you'll want to hear how I turned my mother's rejection into the most meaningful Christmas my children have ever experienced. Before I tell you about this life-changing Christmas, let me take you back to understand how we got here. I grew up in the affluent suburbs of Denver, in a home where appearances mattered more than authenticity. My mother, Patricia Anderson, was the quintessential society matriarch, always perfectly dressed, always hosting the most enviable parties, and always concerned about what the neighbors thought. My father, Richard, was a successful investment banker who largely deferred to my mother on family matters. He spent most of his time at the office or on the golf course, leaving Patricia to orchestrate our family life like a Broadway production where everyone had their assigned role and any deviation from the script was unacceptable. I have one younger sister, Victoria, who is 35. Victoria married Brent, a corporate attorney, and they have one perfectly behaved daughter named Sophie, who is now 8 years old. Sophie takes ballet, plays piano, speaks French, and basically embodies everything my mother has ever wanted in a grandchild: quiet, polished, and obedient. Then there's me. I met my husband, Marcus, when we were both volunteers at a community center 9 years ago. Marcus is a high school art teacher with the biggest heart you've ever seen. We fell in love over shared values rather than shared bank accounts, and that was the first sign to my mother that I was making a mistake. We have 3 children, twins Jackson and Emma, who are 7, and our youngest, Noah, who is 5. My children are everything my mother claims to despise: loud, energetic, creative, and completely unable to sit still through her 3-hour formal dinners. Jackson has ADHD and is in constant motion. Emma is on the autism spectrum and has specific sensory needs that don't align with fancy place settings and uncomfortable clothes. Noah is just a typical rambunctious 5-year-old who thinks fart jokes are the height of comedy. Marcus and I live modestly in a smaller home across town. I work as a social media manager for a nonprofit organization that helps underprivileged families, while Marcus teaches art to teenagers who desperately need a creative outlet. We're happy, but we've never been wealthy, and that's always been a point of contention for my mother. Every family gathering has been a battle. My mother constantly criticizes how I parent, suggesting that my children need more discipline, more structure, more of everything except what I'm actually giving them: love and acceptance. She compares them unfavorably to Sophie at every opportunity, making comments about how Victoria's parenting style is clearly superior. Last Thanksgiving was particularly difficult. Jackson accidentally knocked over a crystal vase while playing, and my mother spent the rest of the evening making pointed comments about children who lack proper home training. Emma had a meltdown when the texture of the turkey made her uncomfortable, and my mother whispered to Victoria, loud enough for me to hear, that some children just need firmer boundaries. I left that Thanksgiving in tears, with Marcus trying to console me in the car while our children asked why Grandma didn't seem to like them very much. I had no good answer for that question. The incident that changed everything happened 3 weeks before Christmas. My mother called me on a Tuesday evening, her voice carrying that particular tone she uses when she's about to deliver news she knows I won't like, but expects me to accept without complaint. "Lila, darling, I need to discuss Christmas with you," she began. I was making dinner while helping Noah with a craft project, so I put her on speaker. "Sure, Mom. What's up?" "Well, as you know, we're hosting Christmas dinner this year as we always do. I've been planning extensively, and I've decided to make it a more formal, adult-oriented affair." I felt my stomach drop. What does that mean exactly? It means that this year, we're limiting the celebration to adults and well-behaved older children. Sophie will be there, of course. She's old enough to appreciate the elegance of the occasion. But I think it would be best if Jackson, Emma, and Noah stayed home this year. Perhaps you and Marcus could find a sitter and join us for dinner. I stopped stirring the pasta sauce, certain I had misheard her. You're uninviting my children from Christmas? I'm not uninviting them, Lila. I'm simply suggesting that they might be more comfortable in their own environment. And frankly, last Thanksgiving was quite stressful for everyone. The vase Jackson broke was irreplaceable, and Emma's episode at dinner made several guests uncomfortable. Emma had a sensory meltdown, Mom. She couldn't help it. Be that as it may, I've worked very hard to create a particular atmosphere for Christmas, and I need to know that nothing will disrupt it. Victoria understands completely. She's already confirmed that Sophie will be on her absolute best behavior. The comparison to Victoria and Sophie was the final straw. So let me get this straight. You want me to tell my children that they can't come to Grandma and Grandpa's house for Christmas because they're not well behaved enough? Now you're being dramatic. I'm simply saying that perhaps it would be better for everyone if they sat this one out. You and Marcus are welcome, of course. You're my daughter, and I want you there. But my children aren't welcome. Lila, please don't make this difficult. I'm trying to have a nice, peaceful Christmas for once. Something inside me snapped. For years, I had accepted my mother's criticism, made excuses for her behavior, and tried to make my children fit into her rigid expectations. But this was too much. You know what, Mom? We'll all sit this one out. If my children aren't welcome, then neither am I. Now you're being ridiculous. I'm offering you a lovely Christmas dinner. Without my kids. The answer is no. Thank you for the invitation, but we'll make our own plans. I hung up before she could respond, my hands shaking. Marcus looked up from where he was helping Jackson with homework, concern evident in his eyes. What just happened? He asked. I explained the conversation, watching as his expression shifted from surprise to anger to determination. Then we'll have our own Christmas, he said firmly. And it will be amazing. The next morning, something unexpected happened. My boss at the nonprofit, Jennifer, called me into her office with an unusual request. Lila, I know this is short notice, but I've been contacted by Channel 7 News. They're doing a series on families who support the community, and they want to feature someone who works in nonprofit management. I immediately thought of you. I was confused. Feature me how? They want to film a segment about your work and your family. Apparently, they're doing a special Christmas morning broadcast highlighting families who make a difference in the community. They saw the fundraising campaign you ran last month and were impressed. My mind was still reeling from my mother's phone call the night before. When would this be? That's the thing, they want to do it Christmas morning. They'd film at your house, showing a real family Christmas, while also discussing the work we do here. It would be incredible exposure for the organization. I thought about it for exactly 3 seconds. I'll do it. Jennifer looked relieved. Great. They'll reach out to coordinate details. And Lila? This could be really good for your career, too. The exposure might open doors. When I told Marcus about the opportunity that evening, he immediately saw what I saw. A chance to create something meaningful for our children while also making a statement about what really matters at Christmas. Let's make it spectacular, he said, his artistic mind already planning. Let's show people what a real family Christmas looks like. Mess, chaos, love, and all. Over the next 2 weeks, we transformed our modest home into a Christmas wonderland. But not the elegant, perfectly styled Christmas my mother would approve of. This was authentic, creative, and completely centered around our children's joy. Marcus, being an art teacher, helped the kids create handmade decorations. Jackson made paper snowflakes, dozens of them, and we hung them at varying heights throughout the house. Emma, who loves patterns and colors, designed a construction paper chain that wound through every room like a rainbow serpent. Noah contributed his own artwork. Crayon drawings of Santa, reindeer, and our family that we framed and displayed prominently. We baked cookies together, and I didn't stress about the flour on the floor or the icing that ended up on the walls. We let the children help decorate the tree, which meant ornaments clustered at toddler height with bare spots higher up. It was imperfect and beautiful. I coordinated with the television station, and they loved our approach. The producer, a warm woman named Angela, told me that they were tired of the usual sterile, perfect family segments. People are hungry for authenticity, she explained during our planning call. They want to see real families, real joy, real mess. Your story, about choosing your children over a formal family obligation, that resonates. People will connect with that. I hadn't told my mother about the television appearance. Part of me wanted it to be a surprise. Another part of me simply didn't want to deal with her criticism and attempts to control the narrative. Victoria called me 10 days before Christmas, her voice tentative. Lila, Mom is really upset that you're not coming to Christmas. She uninvited my children, Victoria. What did she expect? I know, but you know how Mom is. She's particular about these things. Maybe you could reconsider? Just come to dinner without the kids. Would you come to Christmas without Sophie? Silence. That's what I thought, I said. My children are part of me, Victoria. I'm not going to exclude them from Christmas to make Mom comfortable. She's telling everyone that you're being dramatic and difficult. Of course she is. But for once, I'm putting my kids first. I'm sorry if that makes things uncomfortable for you. After we hung up, I felt both guilty and liberated. Guilty for disrupting the family peace, but liberated from the constant pressure to conform to expectations that diminished my children. 3 days before Christmas, my father called. It was rare for him to reach out directly. Lila, your mother is very hurt, he began. I'm hurt too, Dad. She basically told me my children aren't good enough for her Christmas celebration. She's just trying to have a nice holiday. You know how much work she puts into these things. I put work into raising 3 beautiful children who deserve to be celebrated, not hidden away because they're not perfect enough for her standards. He sighed. When did this family become so complicated? It's always been complicated, Dad. I'm just not pretending anymore. Christmas Eve arrived, and our home was filled with an electric excitement. The children were bouncing off the walls with anticipation. Not just for Santa, but because we had told them about the television crew coming in the morning. Are we going to be on TV like superheroes? Noah asked, his eyes wide. Even better, Marcus said. You're going to be yourselves, which is the most super thing of all. That night, after we had put the children to bed with great difficulty given their excitement, Marcus and I sat in our living room looking at the Christmas lights twinkling on our imperfect tree. Are you sure you're okay with all this? He asked. With not going to your parents' house? I thought about it carefully. I'm more than okay. For the first time, I feel like I'm prioritizing what actually matters. My mother has spent years making my children feel less than. I'm done accepting that. What do you think she'll do when she sees the broadcast? Honestly? I don't know. But that's her choice to make, just like this was mine. Christmas morning dawned bright and clear. The television crew arrived at 7 a.m., and to their credit, they were wonderful with the children. Angela had brought small gifts for each kid, and the cameraman let them look through the equipment, turning what could have been an intimidating experience into an adventure. We had agreed to do the segment in 2 parts. First, they would film our family opening presents and having breakfast, showing a real Christmas morning with all its chaos and joy. Then I would do a brief interview about my work with the nonprofit and why giving back to the community was important to our family. The cameras rolled as Jackson and Emma tore into their presents with gleeful abandon. Noah insisted on opening every package slowly, savoring each moment. There was wrapping paper everywhere, excited shouting, and at one point, Emma lined up all her new art supplies by color while humming to herself, completely absorbed in her own world. It was messy. It was loud. It was absolutely perfect. For the interview portion, I sat in our living room with the chaos of Christmas morning visible in the background, toys scattered, wrapping paper still littering the floor, children playing in their pajamas. Angela asked me about my work, and I talked about the families we help, the importance of supporting those who have less, and how we try to teach our children about compassion and community service. Then she asked a question I hadn't expected. I understand you made a difficult choice this year about family traditions. Can you talk about that? I glanced at Marcus, who nodded encouragingly. My children have differences that make them beautifully unique, I began. Jackson has ADHD, Emma is on the autism spectrum, and Noah is just a wonderfully energetic 5-year-old. They're not quiet. They're not always well-behaved by traditional standards. They're real kids with big feelings and bigger hearts. I paused, feeling emotion rise in my throat. This year, I was told they couldn't attend a family Christmas celebration because they might disrupt the elegant atmosphere. And I realized that I had a choice. I could make my children feel like they needed to hide who they are to be acceptable, or I could show them that who they are is already more than enough. So we're here, in our messy, imperfect home, having the most authentic Christmas we've ever had. Because this. I gestured to the chaos around us. This is what real joy looks like. It's not perfect or polished or particularly elegant. But it's full of love, and that's what matters. Angela's eyes were actually misty when I finished. That's beautiful, Lila. I think a lot of families are going to relate to that message. The segment aired during the 9 a.m. Christmas morning broadcast, one of the highest viewed time slots of the year. Within an hour, my phone started blowing up. Friends I hadn't heard from in years were texting support. People from my nonprofit were sharing the clip on social media. Strangers were commenting on the station's Facebook page about how much the segment resonated with them. And then at 10:30 a.m., my mother called. I almost didn't answer, but Marcus encouraged me to pick up. Lila. Her voice was tight. I just saw you on television. Yes, we did a segment this morning. You told them about Christmas. You told them you were uninvited. Actually, I never said I was uninvited. I said I made a choice to celebrate with my children in an environment where they're accepted exactly as they are. Everyone at our Christmas gathering saw it. People are calling me asking questions. You've embarrassed this family. Something in her tone, the same tone she'd used my entire life when I failed to meet her expectations, finally broke the last thread of guilt I'd been holding onto. No, Mom. You embarrassed yourself by prioritizing your perfect image over your grandchildren. I simply chose differently. I will not be spoken to this way. Then let me make this very simple. My children are not negotiable. If you want a relationship with me, they come too, mess, noise, and all. If you can't accept them, then I can't accept your conditional love anymore. There was a long silence. Finally, she said, I need to go. Guests are arriving. She hung up. I stood in my kitchen, phone in hand, feeling a strange mixture of sadness and relief. Marcus came up behind me and wrapped me in a hug. I'm proud of you, he whispered. The rest of Christmas Day was magical in all the imperfect ways that matter. We video called with Marcus's family, who are warm and accepting and think our children are perfect exactly as they are. We played board games, which Jackson won by making up rules, causing everyone to laugh. We had a Christmas dinner of pizza because that's what the kids voted for. We watched movies in our pajamas and fell asleep in a pile on the couch. It wasn't elegant. It wasn't what my mother would call a proper Christmas. But it was ours, and it was beautiful. The response to the television segment continued to grow over the following days. The clip went viral on social media, with millions of views and thousands of comments from parents who felt seen and validated. Parents of neurodivergent children. Parents who felt excluded by their own families. Parents who were tired of pretending their lives were perfect. Channel 7 contacted me again, asking if I'd be interested in doing occasional segments about family, parenting, and community service. What had started as a one-time Christmas morning feature had opened a door I'd never imagined. My mother didn't call again for 3 weeks. When she finally did, her voice was different. Not softer, exactly, but less certain. Lila, I've been thinking. I waited. Your father and I would like to have dinner with you and your family. Just us, no big gathering. Maybe this weekend? Are Jackson, Emma, and Noah invited? I asked pointedly. Yes, all of you. And you understand that they're going to be themselves? Jackson might fidget. Emma might need breaks. Noah might tell inappropriate jokes. Yes, I understand. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't even really an acknowledgement of what had happened. But it was something. Let me talk to Marcus and the kids and get back to you, I said. After I hung up, I thought about what I wanted to teach my children through this situation. I wanted them to know that they didn't need to change themselves to be worthy of love. But I also wanted them to see that people can grow, can learn, even if that growth comes slowly and imperfectly. We did have that dinner. It was at a family-friendly restaurant, not my mother's house. My mother was stiff and uncomfortable at first, clearly out of her element without her perfect place settings and controlled environment. But then Noah told her about his favorite dinosaur, and something in her face softened. Emma showed her a drawing she'd made, and my mother actually asked questions about it instead of just nodding politely. It wasn't a complete transformation. My mother still made a few comments that made me bristle. But when Jackson accidentally knocked over a water glass instead of making a scene, she simply asked the waiter for a cloth and helped clean it up. Small progress, but progress nonetheless. Over the following months, things shifted in our family dynamic. We established new boundaries and new expectations. I made it clear that my children would not be subjected to criticism or comparison. My mother, to her credit, started trying awkwardly, imperfectly, but trying. She watched the television segment 3 times, she later admitted. Each time, she heard something different in my words. She began to understand that her quest for perfection had cost her relationship with her grandchildren. Victoria and I also found new ground. She confessed that she'd always felt the pressure of being the good daughter, the one who met expectations, and that it had been exhausting. We started having regular coffee dates where we talked about parenting challenges without competition or comparison. The most unexpected outcome was the community that formed around that Christmas morning segment. I started receiving letters and emails from parents across the country who had faced similar situations. Excluded from family gatherings, criticized for their parenting choices, made to feel like their children were burdens rather than blessings. I responded to as many as I could, offering encouragement and solidarity. Eventually, I started a blog documenting our family's journey, the challenges and celebrations of raising neurodivergent children, and the importance of choosing authenticity over perfection. One letter particularly stuck with me. It was from a grandmother who had seen the segment and recognized herself in the story. "I am the mother who prioritized perfection over presence," she wrote. "I watched your segment and saw my own daughter's pain reflected in your words. I called her that day and apologized for years of making her feel like she and her children weren't enough. Thank you for helping me see what I was losing." Stories like that reminded me why speaking our truth matters, even when it's uncomfortable. Especially when it's uncomfortable. A year after that Christmas morning broadcast, Channel 7 asked me to host a regular monthly segment called Real Family Moments, where I interview diverse families about their unique experiences and challenges. It's become one of their most popular features, with families requesting to share their stories and viewers saying it's the most honest representation of family life they've seen on television. My mother watches every segment. She's even mentioned it at her bridge club, telling her friends about her daughter, who's on television. It's not the kind of fame she would have chosen for me. She would have preferred I was featured in society pages at charity galas. But she's learning to meet me where I am instead of where she wants me to be. Last Christmas, we all gathered at my parents' house. But it was different. My mother had purchased sensory-friendly decorations after researching Emma's needs. She planned activities that would work for Jackson's energy level. She asked Noah to help her bake cookies, accepting that the kitchen would get messy. When Jackson accidentally bumped into a side table and knocked over a picture frame, my mother simply picked it up and said, "That's why we have these things to be used and lived with, not just displayed." I almost cried. It wasn't perfect. My mother still occasionally made comments that revealed her underlying discomfort with anything that deviated from her vision of how things should be. But she was trying, and that effort meant more than perfection ever could. The greatest gift from that difficult Christmas decision wasn't the television opportunity or the community I found or even the improved relationship with my mother. It was the lesson my children learned about self-worth. Jackson, now 8, told me recently, "Mom, I'm glad we're not quiet like Grandma used to want us to be. Being loud is part of who I am." Emma, also 8, said in her thoughtful way, "Not everyone understands people like us at first. But that doesn't mean we have to change. Sometimes they change instead. And Noah, now 6, summed it up with his typical directness. Grandma is nicer now. I think she just needed practice. Out of the mouths of babes. Marcus and I often reflect on that Christmas morning when we chose authenticity over acceptance, when we decided that our children's well-being was worth more than maintaining family peace. It was one of the hardest decisions we've made, but also one of the most important. Because here's what I learned. Sometimes love means setting boundaries. Sometimes respect means demanding it, not just giving it. And sometimes the most generous thing you can do for your family is refuse to accept less than they deserve. My children are not quiet. They're not always well-behaved by traditional standards. They make messes and noise and mistakes. They're perfectly imperfect, beautifully authentic, and worthy of being celebrated exactly as they are. That's the message I want other parents to hear, especially those raising children who don't fit neatly into society's expectations. Your children don't need to change to be worthy. The world needs to change its expectations. If you've ever felt like your family doesn't measure up to someone else's standards, I want you to know this. You're enough. Your children are enough. Your imperfect, messy, real life is not just enough, it's beautiful. Have you ever had to make a difficult choice between family expectations and your children's well-being? How did you handle situations where your family felt criticized or excluded? Share your stories in the comments below. Your experience might be exactly what another parent needs to hear today. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share. Let's build a community that celebrates authentic families in all their beautiful, messy, imperfect glory. Thank you for being here, and remember, the best gift you can give your children is not a perfect life, but the freedom to be perfectly themselves.